Good morning, everyone. This is Greg Roman, Executive Director of the Middle East Forum. We'll begin our briefing in a few minutes while our analysts collect the latest from the field. This is day two of the Israel-Iran war. A lot of news to report from what happened overnight, and we will be joined by Michael Rubin, MEF's Director of Policy Analysis. I see we have Ayman Jawad Tamimi, perhaps joining us from Aleppo, Syria. We have John Hawley, former Navy SEAL, Special Operations Command, worked for civilian intelligence agencies here in the United States, and he'll also be joining us. If you'll bear with us about 2 minutes, we'll give you the update, and then we'll get started with the conversation. This broadcast will take place between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And if there's a need, we'll have a second broadcast later today, very much like we did last night. I'm going to now have some of our guests come on here, and we are going to start with the morning's news. We are now joined by Eric Navarro, MEF's Director of Military and Strategic Programs. And Eric, I was hoping that you might be able to give to us an overview of what's happened since our broadcast ended last night.
Well, there's obviously a ton of reporting. We're getting more details of just how effective the Israeli strikes have been. Also, I saw reports, some incredible reports of their planning and preparation to get after the facilities. There's a report where the Israelis actually built their own drone base inside Iran to be able to launch attacks from within their borders, which obviously shortens the time to strike and defeats their defenses. And then Israel was able to quickly gain air supremacy to allow for full freedom of action for their fighters. And I believe that that's why their strikes have been so effective, more effective than they even expected, is some of the reports that we're getting from the Israeli sources.
And John, in terms of what you've been able to review overnight, what's your impression of the success of the initial waves of the Israeli attack?
As when we spoke last night, you asked me about, how I thought some of the stuff went down, and I totally agree that this was a long range operation. I did some research and talked to some people last night, and they did build a facility or some kind of industrial compound to either build out the actual asset. And while they were doing that, I'm sure they were targeting high value targets, and that how it was. It's an incredible operation. It's a long one, and not to get compromised is absolutely amazing to me. The patience to do this, and tell you what, man, this shows you a lot about the instability with the Iranian regime because they're able to get in there, buy up people, flip people, gain valuable intelligence that led to these this targeted terminations, which is incredible. One of the things I heard from a very close Iraqi colleague this morning, I said, "What is the tone on the ground in Iraq?" And they said, "quote unquote, all, uh, all of the Iraqi militias that are connected to Iran are in hiding. They are petrified because the whole intelligence apparatus within Iran and Iraq has been compromised. So their command and control has been decimated. So any kind of a plan, a coordinated plan for besides lone wolf and one-offs is going to be very hard for them to do because there is no trust at all within the infrastructure of communications within Iran and also I'm hearing in Iraq. The other thing that I did uncover from my Kurdish friends is the Kurdish border, their insolvent border is on high alert. And the other thing I have a person doing right now is monitoring the opposition within Iran to the regime to see what's going on that's getting through any of the filters in X or any of the other social medias. So when I hear back from that, I will definitely let you know, Greg.
Thank you very much. Now I'm going to bring in Ayman Jawad from Aleppo, Syria, quite literally under the Israeli fighter jets flying over him. Ayman, what's the reaction from what's going on in the Sunni world? Just a little background on Ayman Jawad. Ayman is one of the Middle East Forum's Milstein Fellows. He's been with the organization for about 12 years and two tours. And you really have been to all of these places. You've been to Iraq, you've been to Syria, you've been to
Yeah,
Israel,
I live in Syria now. Yes,
you live in Syria.
I
So,
do. Yeah.
so tell me, what's the reaction from the Arab street, if you will?
Well, it depends. So, Aleppo actually used to be the epicenter for Iran's, project of influence in Syria. They built out this local network of militias and local defense forces, and they had cultural projects like the Aleppo Defenders Legion, and all that just very quickly dissipated back in November and December of last year. So, there is, you're not going to have shows of support for Iran, particularly now with the new government, of course, which has made clear it doesn't want Syria to be an avenue of support for Lebanese Hezbollah, for instance. So, yeah, here actually it's very quiet. It's almost as you could say that Syria is not quite in the equation in the way that it used to be, say, when the Assad regime was still around. And looking at the popular reactions within Syria, there are definitely people who are happy about Iran getting a blow because they still remember Iran's role in supporting the Assad regime when it was still around, and there's still this memory of Iran having been seen as committing war crimes, facilitating ethnic cleansing, and things like this. So um, it may not be that the popular street here necessarily supports or loves Israel, because there is this issue right now of sort of an Israeli incursion into parts of southern since the Assad regime fell. But there's also no love for Iran, and in a way, many people feel happy that Iran is getting further blows to it, even if it's at the hands of a country they don't necessarily like. The populist
Ayman, you've also followed some of the more radical Sunni groups,
Yeah.
Daesh, ISIS, others. Any responses from non-state actors that have seen Iran as an enemy, but also consider Israel to be a mortal enemy? Not the Jelani government, but more of those who consider themselves to be puritanical.
Yeah, so the IS people, of course, they have a weekly newsletter and Neba, which means the news report, and that comes out every Thursday evening. So it actually just missed out in time for um, the Israeli strikes overnight. But what could happen is that next week they might issue a comment on it. But the way that Islamic State has tended to view Israel Iran fighting is they tend to be cynical about it and dismiss it as theatrics that are stage managed in a way that's designed to keep the boundaries of conflict within certain limits. And then they'll contrast that with their own more puritanical view, where they'll say, that ultimately we keep up the fight and we will just destroy the apostate entities that surround Israel, and then that will enable the way to destroy Israel next.
And
So
have you been monitoring the Gulf reactions to this? What's happening with the Qatari government, the Saudis, the
yeah, the Saudis.
Iranians? What are they saying?
Yeah, I mean the Saudis. I have something to say about this in particular. The Saudis did put a condemnation of what Israel did, and they said that the international community has to take steps to stop this aggression immediately. But I think that there's a risk of misreading that and thinking, that therefore Saudi Arabia is standing by Iran. No. What it is really that you look at how Saudi Arabia developed its relations with Iran since 2023 and the Chinese brokered restoration of diplomatic relations. It's really a détente and not a rapprochement. The Saudis don't like doesn't just they cooled the tensions down with Iran. It doesn't mean that they like the Iranian government or they like the IRGC or its revolutionary ideology. It's really more that just Saudi wants to stay on the sidelines and just hopes that this conflict doesn't spill over onto its own territory. So it's not really about being friends of Iran. It's actually more that they just hope the Iranians don't lash out at them. So that really explains the Saudi reaction, and not really a rapprochement, as some commentators have interpreted Saudi relations with Iran.
Okay, thank you, Eamon. I'm now
Yeah.
going to ask Saeed Golkar, who should be available to speak here. Saeed, uh, the view from within Iran. I know you're in Tennessee, but you still maintain great connections with many of your former colleagues at the University of Tehran, other Iranian institutions of higher learning. Uh, it's been 12 hours now since the strikes began. What's the reaction from the Iranian street?
Thank you, Greg, and good morning to everybody. The reaction from Iranian could be divided between the three groups. The pro-regime that they are very angry, humiliated, and sad. The Iranian who are against the regime, and most Iranian are part of this group. Uh, Fascinating to see. They are very happy about all of this operation, that this is interesting for the outside observers, that how some people are happy that when another country attack your countries is because if the Islamic Republic is very repressive authoritarian regime. So you shouldn't be surprised to see a lot of Iranians are happy about the elimination of IRGC high rank commanders and destroying of Iran missile program. And at the middle of this, the ordinary Iranian people are very, scared of what will happen in the future. These three, being happy, being humiliated, sad, and angry, and scared, is, you can see it on the street of Tehran and on the social media. Last night, as soon as the operation started, I was talking with my families, and we are living in the east of Tehran, about less than few hundred meters from the IRGC, headquarters, main headquarters, that have been targeted. So all of my family were outside in the street, figured out what is happening. And I was talking to people who stayed completely awake during last night. Some of them were trying to find which apartment have been targeted, which site have been targeted. People are waiting to see what will continue in the future. But again, it a mix of being sad, humiliated, very happy about what is happening, and being scared. And I think that's a very natural response.
Saeed, what's the possibility of a revolution against the regime?
As long as Ayatollah Khamenei is alive, he's actually the glue to the whole system. He's very like, like Hassan Nasrallah in Hezbollah. As long as he's alive, the regime supporter, they still think that the regime will continue. So the possibility of the revolution or mass uprising will be unlikely, unless Ayatollah Khamenei have been taken out by the Israel. At that time, it will create a huge uncertainty among of the elite, among of the people who are supporting, and will motivate the people who are against the regime. So I'm cautious to see what this operation will go on. If Ayatollah Khamenei will be killed in the next round of the operation, then the possibility of regime change is high.
Thank you, Saeed. I'm not going to ask Dr. Craig Considine to comment on the American reaction. Craig, I know that you've been monitoring social media. You've been up most of the night in Texas looking at what's going on. What exactly is the reaction from the Twitterati and for those other individuals who are commenting from the Americans' perspective on this?
So, in gathering my notes, I came up with five things that have struck me. One is, of course, the pro Zionism on X, and I think they're realizing that this is bigger than Israel, that there are civilizational dynamics here, and that Israel is really fighting the war for the free world. I also have noted within this sphere just how remarkable the attack was, which obviously folks have mentioned earlier, just how remarkable the attack was, and just how devastating it was, of course, to the leadership of the IRGC. Uh, Within this realm, too, folks are kind of suggesting that this could be the beginning of the end of the regime in Iran. So that's the pro-Zionism side, all kind of expected. You know, a lot of folks realize these things, so this is not surprising. Also, not surprising is the Democratic opposition. I don't know if you saw the X post by Senator Murphy from New Jersey saying that this makes America more dangerous, which this is not surprising either. I've also noticed, so the third thing I've noticed is an uptick in posts with the Iranian opposition and Pahlavi. And this is coming a lot from the pro Zionism realm, kind of waiting for the next regime to pop up. So I thought that was interesting. And then two other things among the, let's say, like the hardcore Trump pro MAGA camp. Um, they're saying Iran messed up. I don't know if you saw President Trump's post, but he just said, you know, we gave it a whirl with Iran and they wouldn't get on board and they messed up. But there's also some concern within the MAGA crowd on X that this might escalate into a new war and that there might be boots on the ground. The last thing I want to say, you know, we talked about the Saudi and the Emirati statements. So I've seen these posted everywhere, you know, from multiple sides, but mainly a lot of folks in the pro Muslim Brotherhood crowd basically saying, "Oh, look, even the Saudis and the Emiratis are rejecting this." But we've seen so many messages coming from the Saudi and Emirati government throughout this entire conflict about things, you know, condemning Israel. But I must say, I don't think it has much weight. I think these statements, especially among the main Emirati influencers on X and on social media, I don't think it has a lot of weight with them because these are the influencers on X, at least from the Emirati crowd, who are embracing the Abraham Accords. These are the people that are looking to the future. So I don't think it has much weight. So some things that I just mentioned here are not surprising, but a few things that are interesting to keep your eyes on. The opposition, how the opposition is going to, the Iranian opposition is going to use social media. It's going to be a huge part of their marketing and their messaging. And then also keeping an eye on where the MAGA camp is going with this and whether they think that this is going to lead to a larger war or not. So those are some general comments there.
We actually have some video of that Mossad strike against Iranian missile launches or missile launchers that we'll share right now. This is a Iranian air defense radar system that looks like it's being targeted by a Mossad drone that they were able to smuggle into Tehran and launch from Iranian territory against the Iranians' assets. And in fact, we have four videos which were released by the Mossad this morning. This is another Mossad drone which is targeting a Iranian long-range missile, and it's hovering overhead. This reminds me of what happened with the Ukrainians in Russia a week or so ago, when the Ukrainians smuggled in explosive drones and were able to take out some 35 to 40% of Russia's strategic bomber force. It seems as if though maybe the Ukrainians were listening to Israel, or Israel quickly replicated the Ukrainians. But as we know from the past, over the past few years, there's been the ability for the Mossad to bring in kinetic weaponry to target Iranian installations. And I just really think that the amount of planning that had to go for this was significant. This seems as if though it was years, if not decades, in planning for the Israeli strike against the Iranian nuclear program and its military apparatus, the IRGC and else. But Eric, I want to go to you for a second as our director of military and strategic programs. What kind of planning had to have gone to make such an effective attack? I mean, we've heard now that there's over 500 sorties, 500 different air missions that the Israelis have led into Iran over the last 12 hours, some 300 planes in the sky. Ayman, I might ask you to talk about this. If you've seen Israeli fighter jets refueling over the skies of Syria, this is something that we came out to. But Eric, first to you, what kind of planning had to have been put in play to be able to carry out an attack at this scale?
Well, the complexity is just incredible. I'm reading reports about how the Israelis have reported that they were able to penetrate the highest levels of the Iranian government and affect the behavior of the general staff. There's a report where they initiated steps, and they wouldn't say what specific steps, but to get the leadership to meet, and then they knew exactly where they would meet, and that's how they were able to target some of the top generals. Right, so you're talking about a level of sophistication and penetration that takes months, if not years, to do. Then you have the linkage between the strategic objectives and the tactical excellence, and that's what I think. Even listening to some of the other commentators, the U.S. should learn lessons from this. When you match clear strategic objectives with tactical excellence, you achieve enormous results, right? And that's what Israel is showing the West, the U.S. Also, the point about their ingenuity, right? Warfare or war is a laboratory, and it forces innovation and evolution, and that's what you're seeing in both Ukraine and Israel, right? Is because of the nature of the fight, they are having to rapidly update their tactics, techniques, and procedures, and they're achieving enormous results because of that. As far as the sorties, you see, I talked about it last night, right? So it's hundreds of sorties planned for months at least. If not, they're doing rehearsals. They're doing all sorts of branch plans based on the different results. Now that they have achieved more positive results than they even expected, now they're looking for the next wave of targets. They're also obviously preparing for any retaliation. But I'll just say, if you notice, the Iranian regime, they're limiting internet access. They're worried about their own people rising up against them. They're also the leaders that are left are worried about popping their head up, right? So they're in hiding. They probably have limited communications amongst each other. They're worried about their own survival. They're not going to be able to launch an effective retaliation here. That's my assessment.
I think now that we have reached enough viewers, we have a few hundred viewers who have come on, and we've also now added to our other streams. We're going to give a news update and then get some reactions from our panel. So, in the last 12 hours, we have seen starting at around 8:30 p.m. last night Eastern Standard Time. That'd be around 3:30 a.m. Israel time, around 4:30, 5:30 a.m. Iran time. Israel has launched a series of devastating attacks that continues at this point to target Iran's nuclear infrastructure. They've also targeted the heads of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, advisors to Ayatollah Khamenei. They have gone after the head of the IRGC's Air Force. And from a brazen, daring operation taking place inside Iranian territory, the Israeli Mossad, its intelligence agency, set up a explosive drone base inside of Iran, using it to take out Iranian missiles, Iranian drones, and other hard Iranian targets, including their air defense system, now effectively giving free rein to Israel's Air Force over Iran's skies. The reaction: reported 19 minutes ago, there are reports of launches of rockets from Lebanon into northern Israel near the Israeli town of Kiryat Shmone. You have the red alert anti-missile siren now going off in the north of Israel's country. There are also reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu will speak later today with U.S. President Trump in an effort to perhaps push the United States into joining the current conflict against Iran, or at least to get American support for any defensive operations Israel might need to defend its home front. There are also multiple reports of Israeli KC-130H aerial refueling tankers refueling Israeli fighter jets over the skies of Syria, over the skies of Iraq, and going forward. In terms of the target bank that the Israeli Air Force has struck, there were reports of attacks against Natanz, Fordow, the Arak heavy water facility, Tabriz, targeting Iran's ballistic missile launch and storage sites operated by the IRGC. There are also reports of surface-to-surface missile sites and depots in Tabriz, northwestern Iran, being struck. We also have news coming in that Iran has fully withdrawn from further nuclear talks with the United States. We also have the statement from President Trump regarding those talks, where he says, quote, 2 months ago, I gave Iran a 60-day ultimatum to make a deal. They should have done it. Today is day 61. I told them what to do, but they just couldn't get there. Now they have perhaps a second chance. But as I said beforehand, the reports are that Iran has withdrawn from those talks. There's also responses from the U.S. Congress, with U.S. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson stating that Israel and the United States have been united, including in our shared insistence that Iran must never obtain a nuclear weapon. President Trump and his administration have worked tirelessly to ensure that outcome. Unfortunately, Iran has refused to agree and even declared yesterday its intent to build a new enrichment facility. Israel decided it needed to take action to defend itself. They were clearly within their right to do so. Iran will face grave consequences if it responds by unjustifiably targeting U.S. interests. And lastly, there was a report from ABC News that U.S. President Trump called Israel's surprise attack today against Iran, quote unquote, excellent, with him adding, there is more to come, a lot more. Now let's go back to our panel for reactions to this latest news update. I want to go to John Hawley for a second, because one of the items that we spoke about yesterday is Iran's capacity to respond to Israel's attacks. The Mossad has taken out many missile launchers. Israel's anti-air systems have taken out many Iranian drones, including intercepting some close to Israel's border. We now see a force within Lebanon, perhaps Hezbollah, perhaps someone else affiliated with the Iranians, maybe Hamas, has launched rockets against Israel's north. But one of the areas for response, which has become very worrisome, is not the missiles, it's not the drones, but it's the non-state actors, the sleeper cells, the lone wolves who have been inspired by the Iranians that may start activating on Jewish community targets, Israeli embassies, perhaps even targeting other Western soft targets. What capacity does Iran have to respond with terror organizations and non-state actors rather than just their large strategic weapons?
Well, whatever is in place is in place. I've spoke about it a couple times when you asked me a question. Their command and control is gone. So the psychological effect of them having no command and control, there's people probably afraid to go to the bathroom right now in Iraq and Iran. Since the beeper thing happened, I mean, I know people flying back to Beirut from Saudi, and they were wondering if anybody on the plane had a cell phone or a beeper that can go off. I mean, this psychological part of this, remember, the mullahs are the mullahs. This is all about money and control and power. These people are going to, in my opinion, doing what I do, is they're going to consolidate their own power. They're going to funnel money out of the country. They're going to do many things. But these sleeper cells are now on their own. There's no command and control. They're there. They might have a handler or somebody in the United States, higher authority. But this whole notion of a coordinated attack besides lone wolf one-offs, to me as an operator, intelligent operator, their command and control, Greg, is absolutely blown from, I mean, you guys are intercepting drones before they're getting out of the goddamn country over there. Sorry for my French. I mean, you guys are getting stuff, I mean, 1,000 miles away. It's not even getting close. These bigger, like Predator drone-sized drones, not the little tiny, Frisbee ones. So their command and control is done. There's got to be people absolutely quaking in their boots in any part of their network. Because you know what? Our OSINT is great. Our ELINT is great, and so is yours. And these people have been tracked already. So all they got to do is illuminate the phone, illuminate their internet, illuminate a sat phone. They're on our radar. I mean, and it's something we don't talk about operationally in intelligence, but these people are known. And I believe the sleeper cells, the one-offs, are on their own. So it's, again, I told you last night, or suggested or made a comment last night. Right now, intelligence operatives are going to make their money if they're worth the salt. And that's what it's going to come down to, is due diligence on the ground, using your sources, really leaning on your sources for what's going on. This whole thing, this operation with Mossad is outrageously successful because the psychological part of this that they're getting that information in Iran, what the Israelis did there. It's got to be in their head 24 hours a day, not just the sorties, not just the burning buildings. The whole psychological part of this is going to be absolutely paralyzing for them to to mass any kind of a major response. That's in my opinion of what I see going on right now.
Ayman, I want to ask you about the Iranian capabilities, not their strategic weaponry, but looking at what they were able to do in Syria through the IRGC's Al-Quds division, looking at what they were able to do in Lebanon. Should should countries in the West, should Israeli embassies, should Jewish community centers, other soft targets be worried about the Iranian capacity to strike far by using its ideologically motivated allies or perhaps sleeper cells or lone wolves?
So I remember actually around a year ago we talked in Jerusalem about this issue about do these proxies or do these actors backed by Iran have really have capacities there to inflict major damage on Israel. And I was quite skeptical, and I felt with the confrontation that happened between Hezbollah and Israel last fall in Lebanon when Israel escalated. That really inflicted major blows on the group, and they were effectively defeated in that confrontation because they had to drop their demand to for a Gaza ceasefire as a condition for de-escalation on the Lebanon front. Right now, there have been some of these reports about rockets on Israel's northern front or some kinds of projectiles, but it's not actually clear that's even Hezbollah. It could be Iraqi groups, for example, trying to launch drones towards Israel. Here in Syria, actually, there have been some reports of Iranian missiles that didn't quite reach their target and landed in some places in Damascus countryside. So I think actually if you look at say what Iran had as its strategy in the past of or had a rationale for supporting groups like Hezbollah in the concept of forward defense, as it were, in the sense that if Israel attacked Iran, then Hezbollah responds with a massive wave of rockets and it causes massive chaos for Israel. I don't think that threat is really there anymore. But as you noted, as you alluded to, there is this issue that say people who support Iran, located in countries in the West or elsewhere, acting whether or not they coordinate with Iranians or whether they do it on their own initiative, they could, try to commit lone wolf attacks. And I think that's perhaps something more to watch out for. But on the direct front of say, Hezbollah, say to the north, I don't see actually them really being able to pose much of a threat or challenge to Israel. And I think that was actually as a result of Israel largely defeating Hezbollah in the 2023 confrontation. And as I noted already on the Syria front, there's no more Assad regime here. And yeah, there are still attempts to smuggle weapons on the border areas to Hezbollah. But the new government's clamping down on that too. So it's an even more optimistic picture than I had last when you asked me in the beginning of 2024. So, and I was quite optimistic there. I think if you looked at me relative to the other people in that room, I was one of the more optimistic types. So I feel vindicated by that, and I would say that my I was that my yeah that I'm not concerned of say major chaos say on the northern front for Israel as a result of because Hezbollah has been largely defanged. It's not completely gone away, but that threat's been largely minimized. So.
Okay. We now have Alex Selski. I know that he is between briefings on the Israeli television stations because he is currently working with Israel's Home Front Command as a major in the reserves. Alex, we haven't had an update from within Israel right now. I was hoping we might be able to get an update from you. This is Alex Selski, the director of the MEF office in Israel. Your update.
Hi, good afternoon, evening from Israel, from the Home Front Command. I'm now on the Home Front Command Major Base. Well, you definitely all watch. I can tell you that the atmosphere in Israel is on one side, very happy. I think that everybody understands that this is a very successful attack. On the other side, we all wait for a counterattack, and we, the Hansen Command, in this moment, we prepare only all the Israeli public, all the Israeli citizens to the counterattack. I've been since 4 a.m. until recently briefing the public on the media, and I'm going to appear on the media back in an hour and maybe even until the end of the day and tomorrow as well. We prepare for some major attack, much bigger than we knew previously in the previous months and previous years. But Home Front Command is very, very prepared, and the IDF is very prepared. And for better and for worse, our citizens, our society are prepared. They know what to do. All the technological means are ready.
Hey, Alex, I think we might have lost you there. If it looked like his connection went out. But one of the things I was going to ask was what capabilities or what expectations there are that Israel has moving forward. And I'm going to ask John, not John, if we have Winfield Myers here. Wayne, are you with us? There's been some significant reporting that we've done over the past few weeks about what this attack might look like after the first wave. The capabilities that Israel has to be able to inflict further damage on Israel. There was a great article by Lazar Berman that came out about the way in which Israel might try to finish the job. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that or other things that we've put out in the past few weeks about getting ready for this moment?
Yeah, and as everybody's noted, this has gone so smoothly, both because of Israel's strikes in October that took out so much of the Iranian air defenses. And as we noted last night, Iran didn't respond then. And as Eric has noted, and Ayman too, they haven't responded now, not very much. I heard that 100 drones were launched, but none of them made them into Israeli airspace. I think the Israelis' next move is to continue to ensure that the nuclear facilities are really destroyed to the greatest degree possible, absent American help. That'll be interesting to watch too, given Trump's comment that you noted that he thought this was a great thing. Um, will the Americans come in with bunker busters? Will B-2s be launched against this? But I think they want to make absolutely certain that the nuclear threat is removed. That's got to be their first priority. And with so many Mossad agents on the ground, which was obvious from last night, there's no way to pull all this out without that. And launching the drones from within Iran, I wouldn't want to bet a lot of money on Khamenei's life right now either. They're going to try to do as much, to remove as many leaders as possible, continuing what they started last night, I think.
And one of the things that I was hoping to bring up, and maybe we can do this for the entire panel, is there has been this think tank speak and U.S. government conversations, not necessarily from the Trump administration, but from others, warning Israel about the consequences of striking Iran, that this would lead to World War III. And for right now, we see a pretty limited response from the Iranian side. It looks as if though their command and control, like John pointed out, is in chaos. Like Eric pointed out, they're not necessarily able to even get any of their missiles launched off the ground. Winfield, you pointed out that 100 drones were launched, but not one made it into Israeli territory. I mean, does this prove all the naysayers on the opposite side of the fence who were against an Israeli strike, who were against kinetic action to take the nuclear program out, wrong? I'd like to open that up. Anybody have any thoughts? Eamon?
Yeah, so I'd agree about this. The World War III. This came up when Qasem Soleimani was assassinated in 2020, and it comes up now. But the concept of World War III in this case is absurd because the fact is, if you look at the big picture, yeah, there'll be countries that say that condemn Israel's actions, and say this is aggression against Iran and say it's a violation of sovereignty, like Saudis did, and and you could expect maybe that from China or Russia and so on. But if you look at the big picture, would any major world power actually step up to actively defend Iran in this case and to actually, fight back against Israel, that's very doubtful. So, that's really why you can't really go and say, well, okay, Israel strikes around World War III, because if major international powers are not going to step in on the Iranian side actively and try to militarily help it or defend it, then you can't call this a global conflict. So yeah, I would say the World War III to the World War III appellation is very absurd.
Yeah,
Greg?
just a quick point. I think this is very interesting. Like, who's going to defend Iran, but also the Democratic leadership is not real. Like, at least on X, I'm talking about the social media world, because Greg, that was our original point. But they're not really defending Iran. They're not trying to save the regime. Like even Ilhan Omar, like her statement, it's not even a strong one. Just doesn't even talk about the military success, how bad it is. It just turns into an anti-Israel post where she says America is basically a puppet of Israel. I mean, that has nothing to do with anything. And then even Rashida Tlaib, not defending Iran in her posts, just turning it into an anti-Israel tirade, calling Israel a rogue genocidal regime. They're not even defending it because I think they're realizing they can't, because this attack was so devastating. What's going to be the future here? How can the Democratic Party defend Iran? They can't. But they're in no man's land, anyways.
John, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, when not for the I'm not going to say uneducated person, for the person who doesn't know really deal with this every day, as we all do here, is when I tell people when you're looking at it, look for what they're not saying, and they're not saying things. Saudi is partying their butts off, drinking coffee right now, eating hummus and vaping whatever they vape. That's not drug related because it's illegal there. But the thing is look what people aren't saying. Nobody wants to stand with a loser. And the thing is, the Democrats are out trying to find Iranian flags right now, so they're all busy. So they could have a third flag out in L.A. beside the Mexican and the Palestinian flag. I mean, they got no platform. But this thing is, I've heard from three different people that are very well connected in Saudi, Beirut, and Iraq. Nobody wants any part of this. They do not want it. You have to look at the financial component with this administration, with Saudi. Do they want to compromise that? Do they want to compromise potentially getting, a normalization with Israel after the October 7th thing? No. They're the Emiratis. They've been hiding under their desks for ages right now, and been out of the game against the Qataris and Yemen and everything else. So my point is like I don't see anybody come to these guys' rescue. They're a paper tiger. I've heard in so many different ways last time my colleagues overseas that they got nothing. I even read a report this morning, a obscure report, that these drones didn't even have HE, high explosive in them. They're just flying them to show a show of force to their people. It's a facade. I'm waiting on my Kurdish folks to get back to me. I'm really want to know what the anti-regime, messaging is within a certain age group of people that oppose the regime, to see what they're saying, because this whole thing that's going on is going to create unrest in Iran that is in our favor as anti-Iran individuals that have been fighting against radical terrorism forever. So it's going to be very interesting, the messaging within Iran and the fracturing of it, of what's going on in their own country. Regime change, I don't know, but any damage besides physical damage that could be done, info warfare and everything else, it's going to be very interesting to see how it unfolds.
I just really want to see here, just on the Kurdish perspective, Lokman Kurdistani, are you available to help us with a little bit more of a take on what's going on from the Kurdish provinces within Iran, or from Syria, or from Iraq? And if Lokman is not available, I'd like to go to Mardo really quick to give us a little bit of a perspective from the Iranian point of view, just like Saeed was able to do with us earlier. Mardo, you've been covering this country for decades. You have wisdom that goes beyond your years as it relates to this conflict. What's the reaction right now? If you're putting yourself in the shoes of a senior official of the regime, What are you thinking right now? What is your response strategy? We've seen the public statements, but what exactly is going on in the minds of the Ayatollahs?
Hi, I don't think they had a good plan in place, and they also don't have a plan B. Uh, the attack was really astonishing. I mean, it's like what once Václav Havel said, that the Soviet power in Eastern Europe fell so quickly, we didn't even have time to be surprised. So the mullahs didn't even have time to be surprised. They were caught off guard, lack of planning. They are very scared now that the public will take advantage of this situation. So far, the streets are quiet in Tehran. So far, there have been no demonstrations, but the public is absorbing what has happened. And I think the middle echelons of the armed forces are also absorbing what has happened. Someone on Twitter was joking that the next general staff of the armed forces would be composed of sergeants. So this is the overall mood in Iran. Of course, activists, human rights activists, political activists, and anti-regime people who are outside Iran and can talk are jubilant, basically. And I can say that probably that the mood exists by and large within Iran too, although in Iran, activists and ordinary people would be a little bit more careful because they can be monitoring everything and they can come after you if you say anything. But one prominent activist I saw openly was harshly critical of the regime and mocking their inability to organize, mocking their mismanagement. So this person was in prison 5 or 6 times in the last 10 years, but he was outspoken today. His first tweet was very careful and cautious. The second tweet was very outspoken. I think the kind of hard blow that the regime received cannot escape the people's attention. People see this. The exiled prince called for a general strike. Well, when he did that at the beginning of May, if you noticed, there was the devastating truckers strike. So his renewed call could also play a role in triggering more strikes. I mean, you don't need a reason to tell people to strike because your average worker or your average office worker is receiving $120 a month.
Right, it's no contribution whatsoever. The government's unable to manage their economy. But I think, Eric, this is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about in terms of the economic impacts of this. What exactly is happening this morning with global oil markets? I know you've got the background in business. You've been able to sort of monitor some of the items that have been going on with the economy. How is this going to affect not just the everyday Iranian, but there's also a lot of commentary right now about the global economy and what might result from that. Have you seen anything that's disturbing you this morning?
No, I mean, this is my opinion. I think that the shock will be temporary. I mean, the Dow is down 1%. Oil prices have jumped about 7, 8%. But that's just on speculation that the supply of oil will be restricted out of the Strait of Hormuz, right? Or impacted by any retaliatory strikes by Iran. As soon as there's more information, I mean, that could be easily counteracted with additional output from the Saudi and Gulf states. And I believe we'll get back to the equilibrium that was established prior to this. I think the market will absorb more information and kind of assess what happens in the coming days. I personally think that I wanted to comment on the other comments made prior. Anybody that stated prior to this that this would lead to World War III should be automatically discounted when commenting on geopolitics. They simply have no concept of the strategic environment and the capacity of Iran, as well as the desires of other powers on the world stage. China's not coming to Iran's defense. Russia is embroiled in their own, war with Ukraine. The Iranians are Persian and Shia, right? The rest of the region is a lot of the region, right? And the main powers like Saudi are Sunni and Arab. Who is coming to Iran's defense? This was always the veil or the deception for those that didn't want Israel or the U.S. to get involved with Iran. That's what they used, right? Even on the right, right? The Tucker Carlsons of the world, right? There'll be thousands of U.S. Deaths as a result. Total nonsense. Okay. Iran does not have the capacity to wage a larger war or to retaliate in an effective way. And they don't have as many friends as you think, right? And you're seeing it play out. Of course, there'll be strikes or retaliations, especially through the proxies. You talked about the missile attacks coming from Lebanon into northern Israel. Guess what? That was already happening. The multi-front proxy war was already happening, and Israel was already dealing with the various proxies. When you attack at the heart and the head, that the proxies will die, right? And that's always been the case that we can't separate the actions of the Iranian regime towards getting a nuclear weapon and the actions of support that they're doing of supporting their proxies to wreak havoc throughout the region. So I think Israel is doing not only the right thing, they're demonstrating that all the naysayers have had no idea what they were talking about, and we should just completely discount them from further analysis.
Thank you, Eric. We have about 5 minutes left in our broadcast this morning, and I'm going to ask for final thoughts, starting with Eamon.
Yeah, it's just in conclusion, I would say that yeah, I mean Israel definitely has the advantage as I see it over Iran. And I don't see this evolving into bigger, global scale conflict. And also, actually, yeah, on this front in particular, on the Syria front, the political change that's happened here makes this actually a bit of a quieter front, and Syria is more out of the equation than it used to be. When the Assad regime was around and was such a linchpin of a crucial weapon supply to Hezbollah in a way that could threaten Israel. So yeah, that's all for me from now.
Craig, your final thoughts?
Well, I think everyone has established just how devastating this is for Iran. Listening to other experts, realizing here that Iran is in a desperate position. And just to connect it back to the domestic front politically, I think broadly the left, the Democratic Party is also realizing how desperate it is. And they're not really talking with facts. They're not focusing on reality. They're peddling the same ridiculous lines and propaganda, which are just basically attacking Israel. I want to share this. So last night, when I realized that this was going down, I just put out a very simple post. I said, "You got this, Israel." That was it. And then just within our session today, Joseph Lombard, if you're familiar with Joseph Lombard, he's an American convert scholar who I've had a couple run-ins with. He doesn't like me, but he's an associate professor of Quranic studies at Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha, in Qatar. And he's all religious, into all this Islamic stuff, but he always peddles the woke rhetoric. And this is how he's pro MB straight up. And he said in his comment to me that I was shilling for war crimes. I'm like, no, this post I put out was towards this specific incident last night, and then this is going to unfold in the next couple days. How devastating it was, and the MB crowd and the left and the Democratic Party they're desperate. They can't accept the reality. They cannot accept the reality. It's like they're living in a different universe. They need to wake up, and they need to prepare for what's going to happen with Iran. That needs to happen.
Yeah, and we actually have the privilege right now of being joined by Jim Hansen for the last few minutes of our broadcast. Jim, you've been busy doing the Fox News circuit. Thank you for joining our lowly establishment here of our minor league commentary and analysts. But in all seriousness, Jim, one of our director of our Washington programs, the MEF chief editor, you've been tuned in to the Trump administration's reaction on this front for the last 12 hours. What's happening in Washington? How is it reacting to this?
I think there are a couple reactions. There are folks who did not want this to happen, but who are being forced to accept the fact that this was a highly successful operation, and it has completely changed the field of play for the entire Middle East. The idea, that Israel was going to go this alone, that they would potentially not have the support of the United States is not how this played out. There was, if not coordination, at least information passing between the Israeli government and the U.S. government. And President Trump was aware that the Israelis did not see a path to ending Iran's nuclear program before it could become operational. And in the end, he accepts that. That's the thing that he had made the red line was Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. It was far too close to that for any more of Iran's usual game playing where they try to run the clock out, run a delay, and try to at least use the negotiations to finish their weapon. And in the end, I believe that President Trump was actually aggravated and angry with the fact that he gave the Ayatollahs and the Islamic Republic of Iran the best chance they were ever going to get to have peace, and they turned him down.
And Jim, from within the administration, what's the potential for U.S. involvement?
I think the best potential for U.S. involvement, and President Trump already called for more talks with Iran. I think what he's telling them is if you do not just try to go scorched Red Sea, scorched entire Middle East, start conducting terrorist attacks everywhere, start dropping, ships in the Straits of Hormuz and other places. We can end this in a way that doesn't turn Iran into a total wasteland. But I think they have to take that. Now, the other thing the U.S. is going to do and will have to do is resupply Israel. There are a lot of the munitions that were used. There are a lot of the Iron Dome and other defense systems that will need replenishment. And the U.S. is going to do that. We're not going to abandon Israel. This was not a U.S. operation, but it's not a U.S. interest for Israel to win this.
Okay, thank you, Jim. And I'm going to get John on here, and then we'll go to Winfield and Eric, and then we'll end our broadcast. John, 30 seconds.
Jim, it's good to see you. We met years ago. Good to see you. You look great. Always follow your stuff. A couple things. One, I hope Trump has learned a lesson from other politicians. You can't negotiate with these people. There's nothing. Unless there's serious repercussions, there's no way to deal with terrorists. You got to cut them off the head. And that's all I'll say. The second thing is going to be very interesting how it impacts Hamas and Hezbollah being the paper tiger that Iran is, to see what happens with the hostages. Hezbollah is not doing anything, but more particularly with Hamas and the hostages, to see what their pivot is with what's going on in Iran. Thank you so much for having me on, Greg.
Of course. Eric?
If I only have 30 seconds, really, peace through strength requires strength and requires demonstration of strength. And you're seeing that when you do that, you get the results that you are seeking and sticking. So if you notice also, nobody is publicly saying they stand with Iran, right? They're all the only comments from fellow Arab states or Middle East states is like Egypt and others calling for restraint and not escalation. That tells you everything. There is no wider war. Iran is on its back foot and is teetering. We must keep the pressure on until the regime folds. That's my position.
And Winfield, I was hoping you might be able to share with us what we can expect on meforum.org today in terms
Sure.
of
Right now, we already have 3 new articles up. There's a new one by Mardo. We have 2 new ones by Michael Rubin. Michael is editing articles as we speak to put up before too long. And we have a new article coming by Jonathan Spire, so who's always worth reading. So meforum.org. You will not be disappointed where our work is just beginning, and there'll be new articles going up there literally all day today, and I'm sure through the weekend.
You can see some of the articles that are now available after the strike, diplomatic fallout. There's some really good content that's online there. And I just wanted to thank Winfield for making sure that the entire team is going to keep everybody updated for the rest of the day. I want to thank our panel, Dr. Craig Considine, Dr. Emin Jawad Al-Tamimi, John Hawley, Mardo, Winfield Myers, Eric Navarro, Said Galkar joined us earlier, Jim Hansen, and we'll have perhaps another broadcast this afternoon, depending on how events unfold. But stay tuned to your email from MEF Alerts. Stay tuned to the website. And thank you, everyone, again, for joining the Middle East Forum's update on the Israel-Iran war, day 2. We'll have more for you later today or tomorrow. Have a great day.